Hi, Bob.
Hello,
How are you?
doing well. How are you?
It's always a pleasure having you. And this is a very special interview because I think that you can offer a lot of positive solutions for people who are going to be listening in today.
Well, I hope so because I've been studying this now for about 25 years, this
Wow,
whole thing related to PEMF.
that's awesome. It's always good to have experts who have a really deep knowledge. So before we start to talk about the main topic today, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Well, actually, I may be unique in the fact that I'm the only person who got into PEMF very reluctantly and did not want to get involved because I thought it was rubbish and snake oil, like charlatan science. When I was finishing my PhD at University of Michigan, a lifetime ago, I actually had done a lot of neurophysiology work as well as a lot of electrophysiology work. And for some reason, I got a call from some people I knew at NASA who wanted to study electromagnetic fields on cells. And I told them, I really think it's a bad idea. I think it's kind of crazy, stupid stuff. And they said, no, they really want to. So I said, okay, well,
Pseudoscience, yeah.
really, let me review the literature. There were about 660 papers. I thought it was awful, really low quality literature, a lot of it very poorly done science. But they talked me into it. They said, okay, please do it for us. And I said, okay, on the one condition that we run a really well-controlled experiment. Because my background, I'm an engineer, biophysics type person. So I'm very numbers oriented and nobody could really explain why this was working. And I used to be of the school, well, if you can't explain it, it can't be true.
Right.
Of course, you know that's not true, right?
Right.
You get out of that, hopefully, at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, we ran the experiment. I built all the instruments. I calibrated them carefully and everything. I looked at the entire literature, all 660 papers, and I tried to build something to see if it really worked. And we got this tremendous response on gene expression.
Nice.
Which I thought, oh, this can't be right. So I took all the instruments back, relabeled them cryptically so they couldn't tell what they're doing. I say, turn dial A to 7 or something. They did it, repeated the experiment. We got exactly the same results. So I had to say, okay, my very first entree into PEMF, I was totally wrong. There really is something to it. And that's kind of my background, right, on how I got involved in PEMF. And I worked with NASA for a while, did some work for DARPA, and it kind of petered off for a bunch of reasons we probably don't need to discuss. But then years later, this is about 2007, I really hurt my back because, you and I are both here in North Carolina, and I was a volunteer firefighter at the time. I actually was a firefighter between Chapel Hill and Durham, and I had a very bad back injury. And I was doing some consulting on PEMF for industrial purposes, and I thought, well, I might as well try it on my back because nothing else is working. And it completely reduced my pain. Like literally taking maximum doses that anyone would prescribe to me of oxycodone. I was going from about an 11 on a pain scale of 1 to 10. I was in a lot of pain. You got to remember, I was a firefighter, so things beams.
Did you fall down?
No, actually, I was trying to put an oxygen tank on, and we went over a train track at like 75 miles an hour, and I twisted my back.
Oh,
it was terrible.
Yeah.
So I was never the same after that. But then I could oxycodone and bring it from like a 10 to like a 6 or 7, but PEMF would bring it down to a 1 or a 2.
Wow.
No side effects, no prescriptions, no nothing, right? So I had to try to figure out a way to make it portable because the systems I was building were industrial for research and everything, about the size of a microwave oven. They were about $70,000. So that's no good for anybody, right? And that's kind of how I started doing this, was sort of friends and family and helping people that I knew that were in pain.
We're very thankful for people like you because there aren't a lot of solutions for chronic pain. And so chronic pain is an epidemic. So let's talk a little bit about that.
There's a really interesting saying that I like to go to because it makes me feel better about humanity. And that is that never ascribe to malice that which is better explained by incompetence. So just because it seems like it's an evil plot to be bad to people, it's probably just because people are being incompetent. And can I share my little pie chart there? This is what chronic pain looks like. Can you see that one, the pie chart?
Oh my goodness.
So chronic pain if you compare it to all the people who have, this is in the United States in 2013, but it's about the same every year. If you take all the people with diabetes, which is yellow, and all the people with heart disease, which is green, and cancer and stroke and dementia and AIDS, that is about 1/2 of the number of people in the United States who suffer with chronic pain. Chronic pain afflicts about 1 out of every 3 adults. And when you calculate the cost of chronic pain to the United States, just our economy, it is a little bit larger than the cost of the defense budget. So when the defense when the U.S. defense budget was about $680 billion a year, the loss to our economy from chronic pain was about $700 billion per
Is that because people can't work? What is the loss of?
It's because people are partly disabled for a certain period of time. And a lot of people with chronic pain, it just, it goes on for months and years, and people lose income, and they also are drawing not just from themselves, but they're drawing from the resources of people who can support them, their family and everything. So I could tell you, I was a 40-year-old man who was in excellent health, and all of a sudden I couldn't walk. I couldn't pick up a pencil. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I've been there. I've definitely been there. So are we saying that, okay, we know that a lot of these diseases you put on the other side of the pie chart are inflammatory based. So I'm going to go ahead and say that chronic pain, there's an inflammatory basis behind it, correct?
It seems to be, and that's the interesting thing about PEMF. As you know, a lot of the research that I did on PEMF initially was, does it cause changes in gene expression? That was at NASA. The answer is yes. Then the next big study I did was with an independent laboratory that tests anti-inflammatory drugs, and they confirmed multiple times that the PEMF systems that I'm making, which I keep refining them to make them more and more efficient, less and less expensive, they really reduce like chronic swelling and a lot of the things associated with what we call the inflammatory response. So it's having worked with this now for decades, I would say that what PEMF is doing is it's taking that pathological aspect of inflammation. And what do I mean by pathological?
Yeah, let's explain that.
I mean maladaptive, right? Okay, so if you believe in evolution, I'm a scientist, so I do.
Yeah.
You believe that we spent many millions of years brachiating through trees and everything. If you do baboon studies, you look at baboons, it's about 40 to 45% of primates have broken bones by the time they're an adult. So we all have serious injuries, and many times are compound fractures with all kinds of scratches and stuff. So as primates, our primary risk was sepsis. The biggest thing that was going to kill us until about 150 years ago was getting an infection. That was the number one thing that was going to kill you as a human. Very diverse and changing environment of microbiology, which we've sanitized ourselves out of. But we've also largely behaviorally reduced this risk of sepsis, right? And so it's no longer the primary reason that people die, not in the United States. Mm-hmm. And yet the point is our body responds as if it is. So for most people, every bump and bruise and everything, your body's first response is, hey, I just got an injury and I'm at risk of dying in the next 48 to 72 hours from an infection. So you get these like hyper over the top immune responses, right? But that's because your body is dialed into being in an environment filled with all kinds of unknown microbes, and some of them are going to be harmful, right? And if you get a break in your skin somewhere, that's the thing your body's most worried about. Behaviorally, we're outside of that now. So, that's not our big threat anymore. So our big threat is that we overreact.
Right. We haven't evolved to this hygiene, this cleaner, hygienic way that we're living. We haven't evolved enough for our immune system to say, oh, maybe we don't need to respond like this anymore.
This is really true. I mean, when I was a graduate student, the big eye opener for me was the study they did in Bavaria, where they took a bunch of kids in Bavaria that were sort of, some of them were living in a plastic bubble because their parents were so terrified that they'd get some kind of nasty something. And the other kids they would take them out to the state fairs and they would be licking goats and everything. And the kids who were touching animals were so much healthier. They had a rate, that's famous study, and they had a rate of allergies that was tremendously less than kids who were raised in a plastic bubble. Now we need to have that exposure. So absolute sepsis, antisepsis, is bad. But we can manage an infection. You get an infection, and it's pretty easy to manage with peroxide and things like that. So that's not the main thing. Clean water actually by itself is really good for cleaning wounds.
Right.
So we have behavioral ways to deal with it now.
But our immune system, so our immune system is primed to we're basically programmed to produce inflammation.
We're programmed to go over the top.
Yeah. So this chronic inflammation seems to be the root of all. I mean, they say it's like the root of everything. It's the number one actually source of aging, because they did the centenarian study showed that people who lived to 100 definitely had less inflammation in their body, but also they also had longer telomeres in their mitochondria. So there was definitely that too. But so if this is what we're dealing with, and I'm telling you, I'm seeing people who are younger and younger and younger with chronic inflammation. It's not even just the disease of the old any longer. I'm saying people who are in their 20s and teens. My youngest client was like 17.
I'll tell you, I'm not too old. I'm older than you are. I'm 57. But when I was a child, there was adult onset diabetes, and it was unheard of for somebody less than 45 or 50 to be type 2 diabetic. And now you've got like 12-year-old kids that are that way. So yeah, totally. There's something very, very wrong. And I think, it has to do with a number of things, how we manage and mismanage our microbiome, how not just what we eat, but how frequently we eat.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was okay to be hungry for 6 or 8 hours and run a big meal. And nowadays, we actually got indicated as potentially bad parents because we weren't sending snacks with our kids to school. We're saying, go long enough until you're really hungry.
Oh no, just eat because it's time to eat, but you're not necessarily hungry.
Every 90 minutes now in the public schools here in Chapel Hill, they think we literally got called. Are you guys doing okay financially? Do we need to feed your children? I was like, well, they're okay. Well, they don't have snacks with them. We can provide snacks. I was like, no, thanks. Certain kinds of injuries seem to lock you in. Like almost everybody will say, I used to recover from bumps and bruises fast. And then when I was about 35 or 40, they'll tell you about a story about playing softball or golfing or biking. They got an injury and it never healed. Right? Yeah. Many people, I'm sure I've had probably
knee replacements are I think the common surgery now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that once a person has an injury like that and it just goes on forever, this happens also like with the big medical problem we were having of this century before COVID was, you might recall, a year and a half ago, what everybody was concerned about was traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And in about 10% of people who get whacked in the head, they just get this kind of inflammatory brain response and it never dies down. And that's why you have these chronically neurologically injured people, right? So and it seems to be about 10 or 15% or so. As you get older, it goes up, right? That number. People just can't turn off that response. And this sort of seems to be, it's like a feedback loop. It's like inflammation causes more inflammation, which reinforces more inflammation. It's just one of those things. And so it seems to me one of the strategies you should use that does seem to be effective is to break out of that loop, not to mask it.
Right, which is medications, right?
Totally. I asked my daughter when she was 5 years old, she was in kindergarten. I said, if you hear a fire alarm, daddy's a firefighter. If you hear a fire alarm, should you plug your ears or should you listen to it and leave the building? She said, well, plugging your ears, that's really stupid. Just like ignoring an alarm. Well, I think pain is an alarm. It's not just something in your head, right? Mm-hmm. And what that alarm is telling you is probably related to some kind of pathological inflammatory response somewhere that the inflammation itself is subclinical. Maybe, you can't really see it or detect it easily, but your body is sending you a signal to let you know there's something wrong. And what PEMF does, and to be completely honest, we do not know why. I've read everything there is to read on this in every language where it's been published. I've had it translated. I've been studying this for 25 years. Nobody knows why PEMF works, the nuts and bolts of why it works. Maybe it influences some cytokines or something. But what it seems to do is and you can measure this, is it reduces the inflammatory response pretty broadly. And it allows tissues to reestablish a normal cell and tissue kind of growth and development state, and it kind of breaks you out of this feedback loop. And PEMF can have very long persistent effects like that. It's been measured out to 3 years. Like, I think you and I have been talking about this before. Rabbits, where they give them an injury and then use PEMF to prepare them, the effects would last like 3 years because it's not signal blocking. It's not like pain blocking, like opioids. It's actually doing something fundamental to cells and tissues that tells them to break out of this pathological inflammatory feedback loop. That's what's happening. We don't know why.
So how do people use it generally? Is it, you want to show that? Do you have one of them here to show us what it looks like?
Yeah, I have one in my pocket actually, because I use it for my back pain all the time.
Yeah.
And it prevents my having back pain. And if I don't use it for 2 or 3 days, I still have relief.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's the one that I make. It's a little tiny unit. It's got a display on it. You can see like that. The whole thing weighs 52 grams. It's got a little camcorder battery in it. And the reason it's so small is that I spent many years figuring out which part. So a good question is, what's a PEMF?
Yeah, let's define it. PEMF.
So what it is it's a magnetic pulse, right? It's like,
So can you define like what does the PE and MF stand for? Partial is a
pulse,
electric,
electromagnetic field. That's exactly what it is. It's a little magnetic pulse. The magnet turns on and off really fast. And there's different ways of doing this. There's so many different ways you couldn't even count them.
So we got this device, we've got this nice small device that we can, how could somebody use this for their bladder pain? Can you like help us?
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. So let me tell you, we've tested it on a bunch of different people for a bunch of different things. It seems to work best on chronic pain. The older you are, the more pain you have, the less good of a reason you have pain. It's more like idiopathic.
Yeah. Chronic inflammatory, what is it? Response. Yeah.
I don't know of a single device or drug that works better if it's more chronic and you're older, except for PEMF. And I'm not just talking about mine. I'm talking about all forms of PEMF.
When you say all forms, do you mean like other people's or like?
No, I'm talking about competing devices. I'm talking about competing PEMF devices, because this is not an ad for the stuff I make. I'm just trying to make something honest and science-based.
Yeah. I mean, this is what people selling it online.
But I'm not saying my stuff. Other people will say, well, ours is the only one that works because we have some magical frequency. If you hear magical frequency or anything like that, you may immediately dismiss them.
Yeah.
They have no integrity and they're not telling you the truth. As far as I can see anywhere in the literature, let me tell you, people think, well, wouldn't it make, if PEMF makes cells grow, wouldn't it make cancer grow? Wouldn't it make bacteria grow? There's no indication that it causes damage or that it exacerbates tumors or pathogens. There's none anywhere in the literature.
They're working with me on protocols. We're doing the nutrition. We're on a low oxalate diet. We're doing detoxification. We're trying to ramp up their nutrition with supplements and food, but they're just needing extra support. Let's say they're over 50. Let's say they've had IC for 20 years. I know that they're not going to respond the way I want them to. So I'm going to recommend PEMF to be used in conjunction with my intervention. How could they utilize this on the bladder? Like where would they place it? Like on the pelvis?
I would say, the thing that's so interesting to me about PEMF is that every single clinician and individual person that I've talked to who's tried PEMF plus anything else, can be surgery and orthopedic surgery, can be stem cell, PRP, acupuncture, chiropractic. PEMF seems to make it work better by a lot.
Yeah, it's like a booster.
And so like all the thing, when I talk to naturopaths, I get the same kind of comment all the time, which is, I knew this was supposed to be helpful for people, but then I started using PEMF, and the things I knew it was supposed to do, the nutritional things that were supposed to work, they work better. And I've heard this many times.
Yeah.
So to answer your question directly, the thing to do is just like, if you got one of my systems, you just stack up the coils and put it as close as you can directly over wherever you're feeling the most pain.
Okay.
It's sort of like think about it like digital acupuncture, and you just put it right where the pain is, and it will reduce that focally, that inflammation. But keep in mind, your body is a fluid system that's interconnected. So like putting a few drops of dye in one corner of a lake, the dye is going to be all over the lake.
That's true.
Back, right? So I don't think 95% of people need a whole body pad, right? I think what you want to do is think of it as more like acupuncture. And you're saying, okay, this is where there's really a problem. And I'm just going to stack the coils there. And people actually use the systems I make, like digital acupuncture. And I think for 95% of people, it works well that way. And then basically what you do is you try it for a day or two, and then maybe move the coils around a little bit and adjust the intensity. And it's really that simple. And we've had about maybe 8,000 people use our system. And I say experiment with it a little bit, and that sounds cavalier, but really people will try something, maybe it works. Try something else, maybe it's a little better. And then they'll try, usually around their third or fourth experiment, let me try putting coils here. They'll say, whoa, that's it. That's the sweet spot, right? That's what I need to do. And then when you find that, do it, and just do it every day. And it's very helpful. And very often for like low back pain or some things like any kind of pelvic cavity pain.
Yeah.
Because I think that as we get older, all of us have this like low grade pelvic inflammation, which manifests different ways, and urinary problems, and lower back problems, and everything sort of in that part of the body. I think it might have something to do with the way we evolved and everything, but it just seems like people in their 50s and above, we have this constant problem in the prostate or vulvodynia or whatever it is, bladder problems, right? And so this seems to be really helpful, like benign prostate hyperplasia. You just kind of sort of sit on it, right where the prostate would be, and like perineum, and just it has a tremendous effect on reducing the benign prostate hyperplastic state. Many people have tried it and told me they've had excellent results.
So how long would they treat, like, for example, because that would be a odd place to, well, I guess you can wear it and walk around the house, I guess.
Well, sort of can. Actually, I wear it on my back all the time, right? And the thing is that, it's really good if you're going to be sitting down reading for a while, or before you go to bed. I have a few hours where I'm just kind of relaxing and I think about a lot of different things. And, you can sleep with it. It's very low energy. Some people sleep all the time with it. And,
does it have a timer that it shuts off?
Not really.
You shut off manually.
It's so low energy. Yeah, you can shut it off. There's a couple of modes that only run for 30 or 60 minutes. But yeah, it's the batteries will just go out and then just turn off. And so it's such a low energy thing that no one's ever had any problem with too much duration. It's always when people try to use too much intensity. So the advice I would give somebody is use it as frequently as you can, as you want to, but don't necessarily think that more intensity is better, because there really is like a middle range that's about right. And many people, I would say the vast majority of people who tell me, I'm not really responding to PEMF, if I can just talk them into turning it down 10 or 20%, they respond a lot better.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's really weird, but it's true. It's just too much. It's just too much, right?
What is the difference between this Beamer FSM and Tens? Because that's what people are going to ask me. And I also remember when I was learning about FSM, which I found to be a very effective modality as well. The problem is you needed a skilled person who went through all of the training with Carol McLuckin, that's her name, who went with Carol. And you have to also have a really good understanding of physiology. It's like perfect for physical therapists, right? They understand the human body mechanics, the physiology. If you don't have that background anatomy, you're not going to know how to program this for people. Is this like that too?
No, it's not like that at all. PEMF is like, if you just sort of set it up properly, and I've got sort of dialed in so that you can't really do much wrong. PEMF, it's very similar to FSM and Tens and anything that relates to electric current, but the physics are different. So with PEMF, you start with a pulsing magnetic field. And then the way physics works is, and all the electronics we use this, when you change a magnetic field, it causes an electric field. So the faster a magnetic field changes, the more of an electric field you get. That's how everything works. Light, photons work that way. That's how they go through space. Everything, computers, everything works on the basis of electromagnetism. Even a lot of our physiology does, our nervous system does. And a lot of that has to do with how magnetic fields change and cause electric fields, right? So what PEMF does is it doesn't give you an electric field directly. Like Tens or FSM. What it does is it pulses a magnetic field, and that induces an electric field. So fundamentally, they're probably the same. It's like this induced electric field.
Mhm.
The difference is in FSM and Tens, you've got to push that electric field through your dry skin, right? That's why you got these contact electrode pads.
Or wet skin, actually, which I didn't like.
Yeah, exactly.
Wet
It's not
towels,
very,
I'm like, I don't like this.
no, it's so good. But the cool thing about PEMF is that it doesn't create a current that way. It creates a current by saturating your tissue with a magnetic field and then collapsing the field, expanding the field.
Okay.
So it's about 1,000 times more efficient, maybe 10,000, but at least 1,000 times more efficient electrically than putting a shock through somebody. And that's why it's so hard to get it just right with FSM. But
Oh,
with PEMF,
yeah.
you just gotta put the coils there, and it projects a magnetic
Interesting.
field.
This is more global.
It's much more sort of like global. You don't have to be right on the head of a pin.
Yeah, because FSM, I remember he was really manipulating the protocol every time I came in. He was really good, but he still had to get to know how my body responded, and he had to play around until he finally found the formula for me.
It's not like that with PEMF. That's what's really cool. And like electrical conduction through the body, it's really dicey. It's hard to get that right because it's sort of like lightning, right? You got like this electrode, and the lightning bolt will go on the path of least resistance, and you got to know the anatomy and get things just right. But with PEMF, it sort of energizes the entire volume of space with a magnetic field. And then you can show mathematically when you change the field, you're actually electrically stimulating the entire volume, not just the lightning bolt between the electrodes. And that's what makes it much, much more efficient. And that's why you can kind of be a lot less precise with it, because it just has this blanket effect. So in a way, it's similar to FSM and Tens, but in a way, it's much, much more like advanced because it uses induction rather than conduction. That's kind of the biggest.
Yeah, conduction. That's right. That's what it was. How many do you think they need for if they wanted to do one device, two devices? How many do you think they need?
Well, actually, usually what I recommend is that a person get, for us, and I don't want to market them. I just tell people things. But if you're gonna try it, just get one of our inexpensive ones on the Model A9, just one, and just try it.
Which model is that?
Model A9.
A9.
So
okay.
It's a micropulse A9.
Yeah.
Right.
A9. Okay.
And the thing is that if you or somebody you know has pain, you just stack the coils up, you put it over the pain, you put a 9-volt battery in it, and it will work for hours. And if you respond, then it actually works for most things. You don't need anything more than that.
Okay.
If you want something more, we have a few different models that have different pulse programs. And we have a model that has 4 outputs. So you can build like a little pad, or you can put them on, like I use them for stimulating different areas of the body magnetically.
Okay.
Because I'll do each hand and each foot or something if I'm feeling kind of swollen in the hands and feet, and things like that. So, but I would start with the least expensive one and just literally try it, especially on somebody that you know or yourself when you've got real pain that's just not going away.
Yeah.
And
I have people like that who've done a lot of work and have seen improvements, but they're stuck.
Try. And the worse and the more chronic the pain and the older you are, the better it seems to work. And it's been studied independently by the nursing school at Florida Atlantic University, for example. And the the success rate seems to be way up in the 90% range if you try it for virtually any kind of pain, especially if it's idiopathic. We don't know why, and it's chronic.
Yeah.
So
all right. Well, that's great information. I will drop the link into the YouTube description, so where people can kind of view it and see what it is. And there's a really good book I read about with PEMF. I started reading it. I have to. It's hard to find time to read these days, but I try to, like when I'm in the sauna, I try to pull a book in there with me to grab it. But there is a book. I'm the one you recommended. I did end up getting that book. And then he also has, I don't remember this doctor's name, but he also has a website that has a lot of information about it, what it is, how does it work, how do you,
Is that Bill Pollock?
Yes.
AWLUK.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a pretty close friend of mine, actually. And he's the kind of the global expert on PEMF treatments. And he's been doing this now for about 40 years. And he knows everything you can possibly know clinically about the effects of PEMF.
Yeah, I went on his website. I was like very impressed by that. And then I got his book. So, I mean, his book is really easy read too. It's
Yeah,
not
Power
complicated.
Tools for Health. That's actually
That
the
one.
book I recommend. It's on Amazon, I think,
Mhm.
for like 14 or $15.
Yep.
And it's called Power Tools for Health.
Yep.
How PEMF can help you, by Bill Pollock, Pawluk. Nice.
Yeah, I'll drop the link in there too for that, because I think it's a good read. I think when I read it, I was like, thank you for not being overly scientific. He was definitely an easy read.
He's very clinical, and what he does is he breaks it down into classes of diseases and illnesses and the things that we know scientifically, whether or not. I actually got a bunch of references for him that he needed for that book. I was sort of indirectly helping him a little bit
Nice.
on it. And
Good.
so, yeah, I think it's a pretty good comprehensive view of what we knew about PEMF, which is about the same now, but he published it in, I think, 2017. And that's what we knew then. And it's a pretty good overview of what we know clinically that it does. So there's not a lot of science in it. But I would recommend that you don't spend a lot of time trying to, sort through the science and prove the science to yourself, because you'll never be able to calculate your way to an answer with PEMF. It really is direct personal experience and clinical experience.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Thank you. I'm really excited to, share this with my following and to offer them another tool for helping them support their healing with chronic pain. And, we're going to be in touch next week, and we'll see you then.
Great talking to you.
You too. Great. Enjoy your night.
See you later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.